Hello, class. Now we're going to move on to Chapter 20, excuse me, Europe and North America. And we'll start with Section 1, Western World in Overview. So let's take a look together at this section. We're going to look at some of the troubles after the Cold War finished and how the world has come to have the shape it has now. Recent economic and political trends in Western Europe. And one of the main things we're going to be looking at for this unit is going to be European unity, the European Union, and we'll be doing several projects, taking a look at how that has developed and what are some of the successes and some of the challenges to European unity, as well as how we as Christians view the unification of Europe, first economically, then politically, and as we see more and more interdependence of nations, which is one of our biblical themes for the class. Also, social trends that we see throughout Europe. So Russia and Eastern Europe quickly turned to the West for loans and investment to build their capitalist economies after the Cold War ended in 1990, 89-90 era. And now we still see some ethnic clashing, of course, in the early 1990s in the Balkan area, as well as in Russia itself with the Chechenian rebels. And currently in the Ukraine, we see pro-Russian separatists fighting even now today. Also, the nuclear peril, which was very high during the Cold War. There was always a constant fear of that. Today, this is much reduced. So NATO has changed its role now from combating communism to sort of fostering more increased cooperation between other democracies throughout Europe and the world. Shortly after World War II, the focus came on Berlin. Berlin, of course, as you recall, was in the East German state. So Berlin itself was divided, but was hard to get to because you had to go into East Germany. So what happened in June was Stalin cut off the road into Berlin, and the United States replied with the now famous Berlin Airlift, which brought supplies into West Berlin until he relented and reopened the passageway. The next big thing in Berlin came in 1961 when suddenly the wall, the Berlin Wall, began construction and stood until November of 1989. So in November of 1989, the wall came down as well when the Soviet Union crumbled apart into the Russia and the Federation of Russian Republics that we know today. The wall was very difficult to cause difficulties for travel. As you know, the famous Checkpoint Charlie, this is more of a tourist spot today, but back in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, and all the way up till 1989, this was a very real challenge for the people of Berlin. And some of it still remains as a reminder. There was many people who died, and we'll do some research on that, trying to cross into freedom. And there was a lot of various things that happened to try to keep them from crossing. Everything at their disposal of these Germans was used to deter people from trying to do that. You had soldiers, you even had automated controversy at the time. You had sensors that would automate firing and indiscriminately. So there's some things that if you ever get a chance to go to Berlin, you could go to different various museums marking the wall and the people who tried to cross it and the innovative ways that they came up with to try to sneak across. So some of those are pretty interesting as well. Okay, so I can't get that light to come back on. There we go. Anyhow, back onto NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Again, I mentioned earlier about the role of that today has changed. And many of the Western European countries have now become more of a welfare state where they depend upon the government to supply housing, jobs, and so forth. And the economic shift that occurred in America that we've been studying to go from the manufacturing, once the manufacturing moved to Mexico or China or India, moving more to a service economy, which we also see in Europe. Although now with the Obamacare, we are having more of what you'd call a welfare state, where the government is more responsible for all the different needs of the citizens, but Western Europe has always been more dependent on their governments to supply. And now I've been reading a lot this summer, and hopefully you have, on how Western European democracies are now struggling economically due to the many years of government spending on supplying the people with their needs. So that's another topic we can discuss. Shortly after World War II, the first 6 nations you see here gathered together to form an economic union. Very quickly, however, it changed to a political union as well. The common market became the European Union in the 1980s and continues to grow today and adding new members. And that's a major project we'll be working on, is looking at the members and those who are using the now universal euro currency and those who have not. Social classes, of course, changed a lot since World War II. The middle class has certainly enlarged quite a bit. Opportunities for women have advanced, and there are now many ethnic issues facing Europe, as far as many immigrants from Africa and from further east, and these are some of the challenges, particularly the Muslim minorities in the major cities of Europe, that has caused many challenges for the European states. The other thing, as you note here, is much smaller families, and that's the thing with most of the Europeans. They are not sustaining a birth rate that would sustain their population. So the immigrants are slowly taking over the population of these countries.